Welcome to Bridging Generations in Sales and Outreach. I am your host, Butch Nicholson, and this is where the old school wisdom meets new school tools. And if you've been around for a while, you're a baby boomer like me, or even a Gen Xer, we all learned early on that people want to buy from someone they know, like, and trust, and we know how to build those relationships. But over the last few years, as you know, with the all the social tools that are available, even just the phone, are tools we didn't have back in the day. So that's why we're here today, and I am happy to have my friend John Ellis on the show today as a guest. Uh, I'm the baby boomer in this group, and John is the young guy. Uh, but he has some great insight.
I'm the millennial. I hate to say it. I'm the millennial of this group.
You could probably help us even better. Uh, so, John, tell us, take a minute and tell us how you got, a minute to tell us how you got to where you are today.
Okay. Well, I've been in commercial real estate since 2008. My uncle was actually the broker of our firm and encouraged me to get my real estate license. And so I started the process with them and have been with them three ever since. Over 2020 and COVID, I got my associate broker's license because real estate wasn't very active during that time, and I figured I needed to do something to keep me busy. So got my associate license at that time, and have been working in the tenant rep side of commercial real estate ever since.
So, John, when I started out way before 2008, uh, we got phone calls through a switchboard and carried quarters around in our pockets to use payphones, which you may not have ever even seen a payphone.
Now, I've used a payphone before, not for sales, but I've used a payphone.
Well,
before.
and the only information that we could get, we bought lists of prospects, and we had their address and their phone number, and that was all you could find. There was nothing else out there. So tell us a little bit about your journey from from 2008 till now, just some of the changes with the tools that are available.
Well, I should probably go back to 2006, 2007. My first sales job, I was selling aggregate products for a construction company, dump trucking, hauling, gravel, etc. And I remember printing out maps to find my clients' locations and printing out, I forget what the website was called, directions to places. And I had a Verizon flip phone, and they started to have a feature where you could pay $10 a month and get directions via your phone. And I thought that was the greatest thing ever. I didn't have to go through and print all this stuff out. I could just type in the address.
Google Maps, wasn't that it?
Might have been Google Maps. I forget. I'd have to go back and look, but it would line item where you were going, yep. Right? And in Atlanta, who knows whether or not the streets are closed or construction or et cetera. So you never knew, you always had to give yourself time to get to a meeting, ample time to get to a meeting on time. But I always remember that because, fast forward to today, now we get emails, we can Zoom. We had a Zoom call while I was driving the other day. Long gone are the days of having to be in your office to communicate with your employees or your clients. And, you're able to work wherever you are now. And it's helped a lot in the real estate world because we're out every day in the field, either visiting sites or visiting clients, canvassing properties, trying to get an edge on our competition. And the only way we can really do that is to be out and in and out of the buildings and have a better understanding of what's going on in your market.
Well, and we'll talk about this in a minute too. In addition to that, we're all kind of at the same start with AI, so that's something that should certainly change things. But I'll get your views on that a little later today. So, John, you said one thing that was interesting to me, and I think this is really important. Uh, you said that you're agnostic to sales. You're agnostic to what they do, which is a unique position for what is really, to me, a salesperson. And I mean that with all due respect. Explain
Mhm.
that to our audience.
So I specialize in office and light industrial leasing. It doesn't matter which widget they sell. It doesn't matter if they're an attorney, an accountant, a marketing firm. Depending on which sector you're in, office or industrial, it's four walls and a ceiling. And then the deal terms evolve from that. But for me, it doesn't matter if you're a lawyer or an accountant or a marketing firm. That part's irrelevant to me. What's relevant to me is finding the space that fits the client's needs. So throughout my whole process, what I'm trying to do is get a better understanding of what my client's trying to communicate, what they have in their head, what they need, what they think they need, to help them succeed with their business. So we spend a lot of time trying to get a better understanding of our clients' processes, our clients' employee counts, what they need the space for, how they need to utilize the space so that we can get the most efficient space possible for them to keep their costs as low as possible.
So I would think that, excuse my voice, I would think that know, like, and trust is really important in a relationship like that. It's not like you're bringing something and saying, we can give you this for a price.
It's the most important part of my business because unlike regular sales jobs, I don't have a shiny widget that I'm selling. I tell all of my clients the building that you select is irrelevant to me. Quite honestly, I don't care. It's not my office space, it's your office space. And I want you to get what it is that you're needing. What I care about is the deal. And I want to make sure that my clients understand what it is that they're signing up for and what it is they're getting into, to prevent any hidden gotchas along the way that may cause their business to stumble. So, whether it's building A, B, or C, it's not my office space, it's yours. I want to make sure that you understand the good, the bad, the ugly of each. I'll give my opinion on which deal is best, but ultimately, my client decides for themselves which direction they want to go. I can't make a client do something. I can't make a landlord do something. I can't make a contractor do something. I can't make a lender do something. I really have zero control in the whole deal. The only control I have is where I spend my time. But the value in what it is that we do is understanding market terms and where you can lean into the market to give your client an advantage, but also where you need to look to protect them. And landlord responsibilities, who's responsible for what repairs. In an industrial setting, if an HVAC system goes out, who's responsible for replacing it? Is it the tenant's responsibility? Is it the landlord's responsibility? Can we split it? That can be a big roadblock along the way when all of a sudden you're having to spend $20,000 on a space that you don't own to put in a new HVAC system.
So I would believe that, and I said it before, but I'll say it again. I believe that there's really the most, a very important thing you need to do is to build that confidence in you from the tenant, the potential tenant, the customer.
Yes, I spend majority of my time stressing to my clients that we're working on the same side of the table. I work for them in on their behalf, but I have a fiduciary responsibility for their best interest. And trying to convey that message as clearly as possible to clients that I'm not, when we're out touring, I'm not selling them on what space to go to. I'll sell them on, here's what I like about the property. Here's what I don't like about the property. Here's some things that, you may not think about on the initial tour, but I want to bring it to light so that you're aware of it. So parking, landscaping, the restrooms, where the buildings, where the space is located within the building. Do you have clients that are coming to visit you? How accessible is that to them? How easy is it to find? Those are items that we try to bring to light just so that we uncover every aspect of the space so that our clients are able to make the best decision for themselves as which direction they want to go. But I stress it every tour is, guys, I'm not here to sell you the space. Let the other landlord do that. I'm just here to walk and peel back the layers of the onion to see, where are future stumbling blocks.
Yeah, that makes sense. So. Let me ask you this, John. It would seem with office space, and I don't think it matters. Well, it does matter what business they're in, but if they only need space, not warehouse space, but even the space that's not warehouse space, I would imagine you have to understand the culture, because if you have if you have everybody that works at the company is over 50 years old and been doing the same thing for 20 years and knows exactly what they're supposed to do, that's going to be a very different space than a company coming out of startup with all employees that are in their late 20s, early 30s.
You have to be a bit of a chameleon in this industry. One day you may be meeting with a law firm, and if you're meeting with a law firm that you're going to be probably in a sport coat and tie, at least a sport coat and slacks, in a professional setting. If you're meeting with a new tech startup, most likely you're not wearing a sport coat and tie to meet them. You may not wear jeans, even though jeans are probably acceptable, but you're playing to your audience because you want to be relatable, and you want to continue to always carry professional appearance of yourself, but you don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. If I showed up to a law firm in jeans and a polo, I'm way underdressed. How professional do I look to my new client? And then vice versa. If I show up to a young tech company in a suit and tie, I look like a stiff. Am I relatable to them? Are they going to say, "Hey, this is a guy that we feel we can know, like, and trust"? Is this broker relatable to understanding what our needs are? So being a chameleon is highly beneficial. Obviously, you always got to carry a level of professionalism to convey that level of excellence and experience in the market. But you want to be able to relate, because the easier you relate to your clients, the more likely and quicker you're going to gain their trust.
Yeah, that trust is the important thing there.
That's the only thing that we have. If you don't trust me, there's no point in working with me, because you've got to be able to listen to what I'm telling you and understand that I'm not saying it to get a commission check and go on to the next deal. I'm saying it because I want you to be aware of it. I've told clients many a times, and they apologize and they've said, "Hey, we're sorry, we're being difficult." It's like, you're not difficult. Every client's difficult. Every client has some aspect that they're difficult in. But whether or not we do a deal now, 6 months from now, or 2 years from now, at the end of the day, all I care about is getting the deal done with them and making sure they're happy. So if it's not right away, that's okay. Let's pause, or let's keep looking in the market to find something that fits your needs. Let's not try and fit a square peg in a round hole. Nobody's going to win there. What we want to do is make sure that we've gained that trust, so that when we tell clients something, that they understand that we're coming from an area of expertise and knowledge in that market, and to value that recommendation, to help them out.
Yeah, I believe you were telling me you just closed a deal or found a space for a client you've been working with for 10 years.
I had a client, HVAC company in the market, that we connected. Gosh, I'd have to go back and find out when, through a networking group, and they were wanting to buy a building and never really found anything that they liked. We may have missed out on some opportunities that were great opportunities, but they didn't see the opportunity and they didn't feel it to be of value to them. And I'd be lying to you if I said it doesn't get frustrating. But again, you can't force something in my world. We don't control any aspect of it. Patience is key. And so all I could do is continue to build that relationship and build that trust. And then the opportunity arose last year or 2 years ago for an opportunity in a market for them to capitalize on. It was a flex building that had been converted into a call center, and we were able to go and convert it back into warehouse space for them in a market where the office market's been very slow and dead, and you had a lot of big chunks of space available because of your more national Fortune 500 companies that were doing work from home models and consolidating offices. So we were able to pick up a building at $80 a square foot that, if it had been just true industrial space, would have been $140, $150 a foot. So my client was able to capitalize on that opportunity, and his patience paid off. He's got a lot of equity already in a building that he's owned for less than 2 years.
So, John, I would think that another thing that would be very important when you're working with a client, and let's just go back to the everybody's over 45, 50, and they're sitting at their desk doing office work all day, and that company coming out of startup that's all very young, that it would be very important to have advice from somebody like you on the office space to accomplish what they want to accomplish with the space.
The biggest thing with that is on the newer startups is the number one hurdle that we face is growth, right? We need space, but we don't want to be locked into a space because we're growing, and we want to make sure that we have enough room to grow into the space. And my answer always to that is, well, I don't want to give you too much space where I come and visit you in 2 or 3 years down the road and we still have 5 or 6 empty offices. And so there's a very fine line of trying to plan for enough room for growth within a space without giving them too much space where they're just bleeding money paying their rent for space that's not being utilized.
Yeah. Also, I imagine there are times where people want a bunch of offices that you can close the door and you have a window to see outside, and you have other companies they want open space, and so everybody can mingle and talk. And how do you work with that?
Well, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier is one of the most important aspects when I'm starting to build a relationship with my clients is getting an understanding of how they operate. I joke with everybody, I could operate out of a shoebox. Nobody comes to my office. Where my office is irrelevant because I go to my clients. We either meet at their office space or we are out touring buildings or having lunches, etc. But I always make a site visit very early on with my clients, and I want to walk around and see what their operations are. So I have a better understanding of how they operate, whether or not they're more of an individual offices type group or more of an open workspace kind of a collaboration aspect. And that gives me a better idea when I'm out in the market than trying to find them opportunities to fit their needs to say, okay, well, here's a space that's very close to what they have currently laid out. The less we have to do in a build out, the more we're able to take advantage of other landlord concessions. So if we're able to match spaces, excuse me, that fit fairly closely to their current operation, then it makes the process a lot easier and a lot more likely to get a deal done. But more importantly, we waste a lot less time touring because we want to try and qualify properties as much as possible on the front end so that they fit their needs. If you are a individual type office space group and we walk in and they have one office and a huge bullpen area for groups, it can work. It's just going to be a more expensive build out. And so at the end of the day, landlords have a delta between free rent, or rent concessions, tenant improvement allowances, rate, et cetera, and length of the term that it's got to make sense on both sides. So if we don't have to go through and build out a bunch of offices, then we're able to allocate those funds elsewhere to make the deal better for them, and vice versa. If they're a large bullpen area type group, they don't need to go look at a bunch of offices that have, individual offices or a bunch of executive offices, because that's not going to fit their need. And so trying to get that understanding of how they operate and what they see, I always tell my clients is you have in your mind what you're looking for better than I'll ever be able to truly understand it. I'm trying to get inside and get the best understanding I can so that I can deliver to you what it is you're looking for, or what it is you have in your mind made up to be. But ultimately, we can build it out however it needs to be. But the less we have to spend on build out, the more we're able to utilize elsewhere in the deal.
Yeah, I guess goes back to the old adage: you can get whatever you want if you're willing to put enough money into it.
Exactly.
So, how do you handle it when you've got a potential tenant that gets like really excited about the place, but that it's really not what they need?
Well, we just try to walk them through the process. The best way I can explain it is a couple of years ago, I had a client that was needing to expand their warehouse space. And the expansion was going to be a significant impact on their rent. It was going to essentially double their rent. And the number one question I had for them was, if we expand this space, is it going to make you more money? And they couldn't answer that. It might make it easier, for them to house the products that they're selling. But in the long run, it wasn't going to generate any more revenue for the company. And so ultimately, we decided to not expand because we couldn't justify the additional cost within the business. So trying to walk people through objections to get an understanding of, why it is or isn't a good fit goes back to just trying to help better understand what it is their goals are and what they're trying to achieve with the relocation or expansion.
So let's get to the big new thing. If we're talking about building relationships and new tools, how are y'all? How are you and how's your company diving into the AI pool?
So we are. It's funny. You hear now today, if you're not using AI, you're falling behind. And the big challenge for every business is how can we use AI to better assist us, right? And so we're still navigating that. We're like a lot of companies, right? Is how are we able to utilize AI in real estate to provide our clients with better value? ChatGPT getting statistics, market statistics. It's another place to pull from. Geofencing, Google geofencing is another element that we're getting into to try and see how we can utilize that to pinpoint people's needs within a market or companies' needs within a market. So I wish I had a great answer for you other than we're still trying to figure out how we're able to utilize AI to our benefit as well to provide a better service for our clients through that process. Because again, if you're not using it, you're falling behind because AI is taking over everything one way or another.
Well, I believe anybody that tells you they have AI completely figured out, it doesn't have it completely figured out.
Exactly. I think that's something that it will continue to evolve. And, part of it is just researching it and trying to educate yourself and all of the different AI tools that are out there instead of just keeping your head, kind of buried in the sand. I remember, with kind of going back to one of your earlier questions, changes that you've seen along the way. I've always said, I don't know how we utilize social media with commercial real estate, and early on I was saying, commercial real estate isn't really something that you put on Facebook or you put on Instagram. It's not, it's
Right.
not sexy, right? But as everything's evolved, you start to see more and more. If you're leasing space for a landlord, they're advertising it on those sites so that it's getting a broader, throwing a wider net across the market, getting it out in front of more people, because you never know where a group's going to come from. You never know where a deal's going to come from. I had a conversation with a group yesterday in Conyers, as a matter of fact, talking about some warehouse space that's come available, and he doesn't see who would utilize it. And I said, well, man, I wish I had an answer for you, but with the way Atlanta is continuing to grow and evolve, there's always somebody that's going to come along with that need. Some are going to lease quicker than others, and some landlord groups are more eager to lease space. Some are willing to wait for the right tenant to come along to utilize it. It just depends on the space itself, but trying to get that understanding going is always a challenge.
So what I hear, John, as we've talked today, going to the old school ideas is, in your business, trust is paramount.
Number one, trust is right up there with cold calling. You got to do it. You got to have it. If you don't have trust, you're not going to have a client. If there's 1,000 of us out in the market, right? And I said, we don't have a shiny widget. I can't come in and tell you, hey, I'm going to get you this space at a cheaper price than somebody else. All I can do is sell myself as a knowledgeable person in the market, an expert in the market, and a trustworthy person. Unfortunately, there's brokers out there that they don't care about their clients' needs. They care about a commission check. And then there's really good brokers out there that understand, hey, the long-term relationship is so much more important than a short-term deal. And the longevity of your career, building a clientele and a book of business that you get repeat business with these groups is the lifeblood to our industry. It makes it to where, cold calling, you may not have to cold call us so much as you get latter in your years, because you've been able to build a book of business up and retain that book of business with your client's trust. So it's always been a paramount aspect of me, is trying to convey as much as possible, as clearly as possible, that having your client's best interest is the number one goal in all of it.
For sure. It's almost a paradox with all the new tools that we're getting. The more we get, which can make it a lot easier, but it can also make it a lot harder.
Mm-hmm. Well, I say it all the time is, anybody can go and find a space for them to work in. Anybody can go call a name on a sign, and a landlord's broker is going to give them a deal. And their goal, and they've been hired by that landlord to lease the space. You call me, I'm going to lease you the space if you're a credit-worthy tenant. But that doesn't mean you're going to get a good deal. Doesn't mean that, at the end of the day, the landlord, you may have a great relationship with your landlord, but it's business. They're in the business to make money. They've got to answer to their investors. They've got to get the highest and best use out of that space. Our job is to protect our clients. Our job is to have them spend as little money as possible and deliver that space. And so it's not a win-lose style of negotiation. It's a win-win. The deal has to make sense for the landlord to do the deal, but it also has to make sense for my clients. But more importantly is, I want to uncover every aspect of that deal so they understand what it is that they're getting into. Leases are like cell phone contracts. You go to Verizon, you get a cell phone, they print you out a receipt that's this long with all kinds of legal in the document itself, nobody reads it. You sign it, you take your phone, you go on your way. Well, you'd be surprised in that small, medium-sized market how many business owners will say, "Am I protected? Am I good on this lease? Am I okay to sign it?" We have to pump the brakes and say, you need to have your real estate attorney review this with you, because we're not attorneys. We can't give you legal advice. I can give you leasing advice, but I can't give you legal advice. You need to have that expert review it to tell you that you're safe and good to go on signing it. Because at the end of the day, if there's a dispute, there's a problem, there's an issue, whatever it says in that document, that lease document, is going to be what holds true. And a landlord's going to stick to it, and a tenant's going to stick to it. And that document is there to protect the landlord, but it's also there to protect the tenant. And helping groups understand that this is also here to protect you is important, because we want to make sure you're protected. And we want to protect you as best as we can. You know, the landlord, the property owner, is always going to take precedence in the protection, right? They own the property. It's their property. You're going to play by their rules. If you don't like it, go buy your own building. But if you're gonna be in their building, we're going to play by their rules. But we want to balance out the liabilities and the risk as much as we can and where we can.
Well, John, as we wrap up here today, what comes to mind for me is really, from talking with you today, is the purpose of this show. And I believe that the baby boomers, Gen Xers, we grew up with no like and trust, so that's easy for us. We didn't grow up with the tools that are there today, so that can be a challenge, and vice versa. And it's not one or the other, it's both. You've got to have the know, like, and trust, but you've got to maximize it with the new tools.
It's 100%. You know, you can't get away from the old school way of doing sales, right? You've got to be out in the market, whatever it is you're selling. You got to be out in the market. You need to be an expert in whatever it is you're selling. You're not going to beat cold calling. You're not going to beat prospecting. You're not going to beat networking. Yes, you can utilize AI and supplement some of that, and maybe, again, you know, hit a wider market. But ultimately, you've got to be willing to go and put in the work and the time to cultivate business and generate new business each day. Those tools are not set to replace one or the other. They're there to either make your job easier, maybe, or make it more efficient, and utilize them where you can. But ultimately, you end up going back to old school one way or the other of, you know, working hard, cold calling, and connecting with as many people as you can. You know, I tell my wife it's a dating game. We get told no all the time. You know, every day we're getting told no. I've got a broker, or we're good. You know, this, that, and the other. And you just have to keep going and going and going. And it makes the wins that much greater. You know, the new clients, you appreciate them that much more. But there's no tool that's going to replace that hard work.
Regardless. Well, John, as we wrap up here today, if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Best way they can do that is that everybody can call me. My cell phone rings nonstop. I don't know if you want me to say that or put it in a chat, but 770-891-6781, or my email on the ticker below at jmellis@m3companies. Again, I'm on email and phone all day long. So those are the easiest ways to connect with me.
John, I really appreciate you being on the show today, and that was some great insight. Before we leave, I want to thank Fist Bump, who promoted, marketed, and most importantly, produced our show today. So a big hand for them as being our sponsor. And there's a lot of different stuff that comes out in our shows. And just remember this is about evolving. You know, we talked about AI. You know, nobody has AI figured out. But this is about evolving, not starting over. So appreciate you watching the show this week. We'll be back next week at 10 o'clock on Friday morning.